Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have to tell you, this whole situation with Sonny, Carly, and Valentin has been sitting in my mind ever since I watched it unfold. I've followed General Hospital for years, and every now and then the writers come up with a storyline that makes me shake my head because it feels so believable. Just when I thought Sonny had enough on his plate dealing with dangerous enemies, it looks like he still has time to interfere with matters of the heart. That's classic Sonny, if you ask me. A man can be planning a war one minute and worrying about the people he loves the next. Around here, we'd say, that's just how the cookie crumbles. But somehow, Sonny always finds a way to make things even more complicated. What really caught my attention is how determined Sonny remains to destroy Jen Sidwell. I don't think this is simply about revenge anymore. From where I stand, Sonny believes that as long as Sidwell is still breathing free, nobody he cares about is truly safe. I've seen Sonny make risky choices before, and when he convinces himself that the end justifies the means, there aren't many people who can change his mind. That stubborn streak has always been one of his greatest strengths and one of his biggest flaws. Lord have mercy, it has certainly gotten him into enough trouble over the years. But here's the part that surprised me the most. Even while all this danger is hanging over Port Charles, Sonny somehow finds room in his life to meddle in someone else's romance. That almost made me laugh because it feels exactly like him. He doesn't simply fight enemies. He tries to control every situation around him. If he believes a relationship could become a problem, he'll step in whether anyone asks for his opinion or not. I've learned never to underestimate a man who thinks he's protecting his family, even when everyone else sees him making a terrible mistake. Watching Carly and Valentin grow closer has been one of the most unexpected stories I've seen in quite a while. Nobody could have convinced me months ago that these two would develop such a meaningful bond. It all started with fear, distrust, and necessity, yet somewhere along the way they found comfort in each other. Those are the kinds of relationships that often leave the biggest impression on me because they aren't planned. They happen quietly, one difficult day at a time, until suddenly both people realize they don't want to let go. When Valentin left for Geneva, I honestly felt the weight of that goodbye. He wasn't taking a simple trip. He was walking straight into uncertainty, hoping to expose Ross Cullum's dangerous double game to the head of the WSB. The way I see it, Valentin understood there was a very real chance he would end up back in Steinmauer once everything came out. That's an awfully heavy burden to carry, especially when you've finally found someone who makes you want to believe in a different future. What stayed with me most was the silent heartbreak between Carly and Valentin. Neither of them knew whether that farewell would be temporary or permanent, and that uncertainty can be more painful than any clear ending. That's exactly why I can't help wondering what Sonny's next move will be. If Carly and Valentin are lucky enough to find their way back to each other, I have a feeling Sonny won't be standing on the sidelines cheering them on. Knowing him, he'll believe he's doing the right thing, even if it means becoming the biggest obstacle standing between two people who have already sacrificed so much. Now, here's the part that gave me a little hope. After everything Valentin has been through, the latest summer spoilers suggest that he isn't destined to disappear forever. Somehow, he'll avoid the prison sentence he feared was waiting for him. And if that's true, then I think fate is giving him one last opportunity to fight for the life he almost lost. I'll tell you, I've watched enough soap operas over the years to know that second chances don't come around very often. When they do, they're usually followed by an even bigger storm. The first thing that crossed my mind wasn't whether Valentin could make it back to Port Charles. It was whether he and Carly could ever pick up where they left off. Those two didn't just stumble into a romance overnight. They built trust during one of the most difficult chapters of their lives. They were forced into close quarters by circumstances neither of them wanted, yet little by little they stopped seeing each other as enemies. That's something I found surprisingly touching. Some of the strongest relationships don't begin with fireworks. They begin with quiet moments, shared fears, and the comfort of knowing someone is standing beside you when the whole world feels uncertain. That's exactly why their goodbye carried so much emotional weight. It wasn't simply two people saying farewell before a trip. To me, it looked like two people trying to memorize each other's faces because they honestly believed it might be the last time. Those scenes stayed with me long after the episode ended. Sometimes silence says more than 100 speeches ever could, and I think Carly and Valentin understood that better than anyone. If Valentin really returns to Port Charles, everything changes. But here's where life has a funny way of making things difficult. It's one thing to care deeply for someone in private. It's another thing to stand beside that person when everyone around you is watching, judging, and waiting for you to fail. I've seen relationships fall apart because of outside pressure, not because the feelings disappeared. That's why I don't believe Carly and Valentin's biggest challenge will be finding each other again. Their biggest challenge will be protecting what they've built once the rest of Port Charles starts paying attention. And let's be honest here, Sonny isn't the kind of man who overlooks something like this. I wasn't born yesterday, and neither is Sonny. He notices changes in Carly long before most people would. Even if Carly and Valentin tried to keep their relationship quiet for a while, I don't think it would stay hidden. Sonny has too many connections, too much experience, and far too much instinct. Before long, he'd put the pieces together, and once that happens, all bets are off. What really grabbed my attention was learning that Sonny won't be handling this situation by himself. Instead, he'll bring Brick into the picture, and that's where I started paying even closer attention. Brick has always been someone Sonny trusts when things become serious. He isn't brought in for small problems or harmless misunderstandings. When Sonny calls on Brick, it usually means he's preparing for something calculated and carefully planned. That tells me Sonny isn't acting out of a brief emotional reaction. He's preparing a strategy. Now, I have to admit something. I've always admired Brick's intelligence and loyalty. He's the kind of man who gets the job done without creating unnecessary drama. But loyalty can become a dangerous weapon depending on who's giving the orders. If Sonny truly wants Brick to help destroy any future Carly and Valentin might have together, then I expect this won't involve one simple conversation or one angry confrontation. I think it'll be much more subtle than that. Brick could uncover information, create opportunities, or quietly influence events behind the scenes until cracks begin to appear where there weren't any before. That's what worries me the most, because sometimes the quiet moves do the greatest damage. The more I think about Sonny's position, the more complicated this story becomes. I honestly don't believe Sonny wakes up each morning asking himself how he can make Carly miserable. In his own mind, he's probably convinced that Valentin is too dangerous, too unpredictable, or too connected to trouble to ever be the right man for her. That's what makes Sonny such a fascinating character after all these years. He often makes painful decisions while believing he's protecting the people he loves. Whether he's right or wrong is another question entirely, but his intentions and his actions don't always lead to the same place. As for Carly, I think she's standing at one of the biggest crossroads she's faced in a long time. If she truly believes Valentin deserves another chance, she'll eventually have to choose whether she's willing to fight not only for their relationship, but also against the opinions of people who have been part of her life for decades. That isn't an easy choice for anyone, especially when one of those people is Sonny Corinthos. History has a way of pulling Carly back towards Sonny even when she tries to move forward, and I can't help wondering whether that history will once again become impossible to escape. Looking ahead, I honestly believe this storyline has all the ingredients for an unforgettable summer. We have love that survived impossible odds, a man finally returning home after believing everything was lost, an ex-husband who refuses to accept the new reality, and Brick stepping into a role that could quietly change everyone's future. That's the kind of setup that keeps me counting down the days until the next episode. If these spoilers play out the way they're being described, I don't think Carly and Valentin's reunion will last very long before Sonny launches his plan. The real question isn't whether Sonny will interfere, because I'm convinced he will. The question is whether Carly and Valentin have become strong enough to survive everything Sonny and Brick throw at them. Personally, I wouldn't underestimate either side. But if there's one thing General Hospital has taught me after all these years, it's that love is never tested when life is easy. It's tested when powerful people are determined to tear it apart, and I have a feeling that's exactly where this story is headed.